YouTube? This is Ariel coming to you again from my channel, and welcome back to another episode of Retro Life Reviews. And here again is my good friend CK.
Hello everybody, welcome back.
So we're going to be reviewing the classic game Strider for the Sega Genesis. This is the all Sega Genesis reviews.
It's the Sega Genesis channel.
All the time. Strider.
Yes. Created by Capcom in '89 for arcades. It was then, ported to the home consoles, Genesis, the NES as well. And based on the history of the game, the NES has a slightly different history, I guess, or storyline for the game, whereas the Genesis one was heralded to be more in line with the original arcade version. Also, it's the version that had won the most recognized port of the game.
Alright, so we review everything on a like, love, and loathe scale with graphics, music, sound effects, gameplay, controls, difficulty, fun factor, replay value, and story if applicable. So, what'd you think of the graphics in Strider, CK?
I like the graphics in Strider. It's an interesting kind of combination. Plays close to the arcade version with regards to, the character shading and such. Like, characters large enough to sprite anyway. The multi-tones that you get makes it look, gives it a more three-dimensional look versus some of the other games on Genesis, which might have been a little less detailed. The backgrounds and stuff seem to be kind of out of place in a way. And the reason why I say that is because they don't necessarily have as much depth as the character sprite does. That's just kind of from my initial reaction to it. All the baddie sprites, like the bad guys, the bosses, and the character has that depth to it, kind of like a comic book kind of feel to it. The rest of it seems a bit kind of pasted on. And I don't know if that's just what they were going for the futuristic feel of the world that he's in, or if it's just what they were limited to for the console. Not as detailed as a lot of other Genesis games I've seen, especially with regards to the depth of backgrounds and such, but it kind of varies from level to level. So for me, graphics gets a retro double like.
Awesome, a retro double like, and you're not going to believe it, I was actually thinking of giving it a double like, so it's funny. We're really on the same page lately on reviewing games, so yeah, graphics for me, lots of greens, browns, and yellows I was thinking in my mind, and just it's very big sprites, which I really like. There's not a lot of details in the actual backgrounds, and the graphics look a little bit more like a computer-style game and then a Genesis game. A lot of games on the Genesis have a distinctive
look to it,
style of look. This one doesn't. There's a lot of attention to details, even though there isn't a lot of detail, but there's a lot of... I like some of the levels where there's dark and light, where sometimes the light will go completely out and it'll be like the light was turned off and you'll see just dark.
Oh, yes.
Like shadows.
Shadows, kind of silhouette versions, yeah.
I think that really adds a dynamic to it and a creative style that you don't see on a lot of Genesis games. So for that, I really do respect the graphics enough to like it, but not love it. So I am going to go with a retro double like. And so far we're tied.
But it's not a competition.
I know it's not a competition, but it's just fun. Alright, so moving on to music. What did you think of the music in Strider?
The music's different. It's different. It's more kind of melodic, atmospheric, you know what I mean? Like, it's more of a score to the game than it is really kind of like audio track, like an OST. I wouldn't play any of the music, actually, of the levels that I played and some of the levels that I've seen played, just to listen to the music. It's not that type of music. Not to say it's bad. And I don't want to position it that way, that this is not music that you don't want to listen to. It's just more of a score for the game and the world. It is more so a score than it is a soundtrack, so to speak. And outside of that, I mean, it's got some really nice setups. Each of the levels have their own kind of feel. Something similar to like what we were talking about Donkey Kong, where the music sets the atmosphere for the level, sets a tone for it, and an audio expectation of what you're about to experience. And I do like that about it, and I gotta give that part of it respect. It's not just your general throw some bing bang 8-bit beats behind a synthesizer. And for that, music gets a like.
Yep. Yep, I hear you. We are definitely on the same page with this game. Alright, so music for me, I just was thinking, I wrote a lot of notes, and I was just saying in my notes, basic, nothing amazing, some dramatic music. Some areas felt a little epic.
Yes.
The things I didn't like about it is a lot of times the music would just stop and change, like someone was switching the track.
Yes.
Or something and didn't know what to do and they like mixed it wrong. That's one of the things I don't like about the music in this game. Is I guess it's not a bad thing for the music when it stops. I mean, you really can't complain about the music just because it stops and switches. I feel that's something else, but it's annoying and it takes away from the enjoyment of the music, in my opinion, when things just all of a sudden stop dead in its tracks and then a new track comes on at certain times. So that's a little distracting and frustrating. And the music isn't anything amazing. It's adequate. It does a good job in, I guess, the feel, but it's nothing that I'd want to listen to other than in the game. So it's no Streets of Rage 2 music, I'm trying to say. Every time I talk about music, I'm just going to talk about Streets of Rage 2. But yeah, it's good. I enjoyed it. So I'm going to give the music also a like for me. Alright, so moving on to sound effects. What'd you think of the sound effects in Strider?
Sound effects in Strider. The blade sounds cool. You hear it a lot. I mean, you walk around, you slash, you slide, you jump. When you think about it, there really aren't a lot of sound effects per se. And we've always had this conversation about sound effects not really being like massive. I mean, if it's not noticeable, it's kind of a good thing. Like if it doesn't jump out at you and make it really difficult for you to play the game. That's what I feel that this game's done. The sound effects really kind of work. They're very simple. Bad guys exploding, different machinery exploding, Strider jumping. I'd say maybe a palette of, at most, maybe 8 to 12 sounds. It's nothing to write home about, and it's nothing really to complain about, so I'm just going to cut to the chase and say sound effects gets a like from me.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Oh my god. This is the twin review. I don't know what we did, but we are definitely on the same page. But I'm not sure yet how I'm going to score it, so I shouldn't say that. But yeah, sound effects, I feel it's a little overbearing with the sound effects in this game. Lots of moments where a lot of sirens. The primary sound effects is the blade, and it's done very well, and it sounds like a blade. There's nothing about it, staticky, nothing about it that would sound awkward. It is clearly a blade being slashed throughout the game, so it works. That sound effect is really good. But there's a lot of other sound effects that annoyed me. There's one level, I think it was level 4, kind of a jungle level, where there was a lot of, I don't know if they were chimps, but like weird sound effects, repetitive sound effects of these monkeys. I don't know if you heard that.
Yes.
I didn't like that. That was very distracting because it was very repetitive and done in a way that felt very cut and paste. There's a mixed bag going on there. There's some really good ones, but there's some that really, I don't want to say take you out of the game, but like are distracting. They're very loud, and the sirens and certain sound effects I did not enjoy and kind of noticed it more than normal. A lot of games, as I say, I don't really notice sound effects. This game, it like hit you over the head with the sound effects. So I don't know if it's a bad or good thing. It's a bit of a mixed bag. At times it was a little bit overbearing, I felt. So I'm going to give it a retro like for sound effects. I am not copying your scores.
No, you're not. Not at all.
So far, we're lining up. Alright, moving on to gameplay. What did you think of the gameplay in this game, CK?
The gameplay is different. Unlike a lot of other, I guess, hack and slash games, or maybe like some of the hack and slash games that are out there, Strider has a lot of level crawling. And one thing about the Genesis version, and I think this kind of just goes across for all the versions, is that there are like moving platforms and different areas. I think in one of the levels, Strider is like in a 0G space, so he's kind of floating around in a zero space, and you're kind of moving left and right to navigate him through this 0G space. Other levels, he can flip upside down due to gravity. They did a really good job at making the game, having a lot of variance in the gameplay, because these games can get really repetitive, as you know, with games like Double Dragon or Contra. You're running, you jump, you shoot. That's pretty much it. In Strider, there's a little more going on in it with the climbing and jumping, climbing the walls, jumping and hanging onto platforms and using your hands to kind of monkey bars across different areas. It's done well. Of all the ratings, and I'm not a big fan of the game per se, just due to just my experience, but with regards to kind of everything that this game has, the gameplay is probably one of the showcase pieces. It's a showcase kind of thing that makes this game really stand out. And for that, I give gameplay a retro love.
Retro love for gameplay. Yeah, no, it's a really enjoyable gameplay, classic game. Bit flawed, but enjoyable and lovable as well. Alright, so gameplay for me, I put down fast-paced with slowdowns. It's interesting.
Yes.
There's a lot of slowdowns in this game. I'm sure you noticed it throughout the game. It's a little annoying, more so than other games in that era, because there were a lot of games with slowdowns on the system, you know? Yeah, it just happens a lot in a lot of games from that era. So, but this one, it just happens way too much at times. I don't want to say it's terrible, but it happens, and it's the way the game is structured is a very fast-paced game. It can detract from the fast-pacedness and the enjoyment when you've got severe slowdowns, you know? And the slowdowns can be a hindrance to the enjoyment of the gameplay. With walking on walls, the gravity elements in the game, where the gravity is like kind of feels like it's been turned off kind of feel, or you just got like gravity boots or something. It's enjoyable because it's not something you see a lot. It's original, what I'm trying to say. There isn't a lot of games on the system that does this, so it's enjoyable. I really like it. Fun gameplay. So I'm going to give gameplay a retro double like.
Hey, break the cycle.
I broke the cycle. Slowdowns were just too much for me. Yeah, so moving on to controls. What'd you think of the controls in Strider?
The controls is the weakest link in this game. It is hands down awful. I'm sorry. After getting through like the first level and dying, the no control in midair already in itself. And there are a lot of games out there that had that feature on both, consoles in this generation. It's trying, to say the least. And once you kind of get it down, you get it, but it makes it very hard to compensate for any type of misjudgment. I was so frustrated in playing this game. Again, based on gameplay, I love the elements that this game provided as per an actual, hack and slash type of game. But the controls made it so difficult to truly enjoy the playthrough. I really can't get around the fact that I really dislike the controls of this game. And I agree with you with regards to the slowdowns, especially when there are a lot of sprites on the screen. On top of that, just the not being able to maneuver your character per se in ways that you'd like to manage your landings and your precisions. It feels as though you just jump and you wing it, just slash and hope you don't get hit, and because of that gets a retro half-light.
I thought you were gonna go Loath. I really thought you were gonna go Loath here, but all right, it sounded like a Loath. Are you sure you don't want to rescore that Loath?
No,
CK?
no, it's I'm playing it down, but it's not terrible, and I like the gameplay. So that goes to show you that
yes,
the
I
controls
know.
really are the irking part of it. And really, it's just the jumping.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so controls for me. Wow. I don't think I hate the controls as much as you do. So we're now going the opposite way. We're going to be completely different scores from now on. I think it all comes down to the slowdowns. I really think that's what affects the controls, and that you're having your issues with the controls is with the slowdown. A lot of times when you jump, that's the time where you notice the slowdown the most. So that affects the jumping and creates a annoyance in the controls. For me, it didn't really bother me as much as I think it bothered you. It still feels move enough that you're doing the action you need to do. There are moments where the jumping and the mechanics could be a little bit tricky, maybe a little stiff, but controls get the job done. I think it all comes down to the slowdown. I really wish they could have fixed that, and they could have maybe toned down some of the creatures on the screen, the robots or whatever things that they have on the screen. Maybe they should have reduced it a little bit to avoid the slowdown, because they should have known when they played this game, when they were testing this game, that there was a heck of a lot of slowdown. It's the worst game for slowdown, even though I love this game, although I haven't given it a love yet. But I still like this game. I like this game. I thought I loved it. Clearly I do not. I loved it until I started to review it. Now I realize that I like it. Alright, so controls for me, I'm going to give the controls a retro-like for controls. All right, so moving on to difficulty. What do you think of the difficulty in Strider, CK?
The game isn't that difficult, and without any type of like actual difficulty adjustments, based on the first 5 levels I think I kind of got through, they're manageable. The game starts off kind of easy and gets you into it right away. You know, they toss you until you get your little assistant buddy, and then baddies start coming out and shooting you in succession. And once you figure out that, hey, I can just dunk under this and slash people, it becomes fairly easy. It's almost like a cakewalk. The thing that makes the game, that gives challenge to the game, quite frankly, is the terrain, and it's the platforming. And the build of this game is great. It's really, really good. So it really adds to that difficulty because of the amount of levels that you have to kind of, traverse through and such. I don't think it was a very difficult game to begin with. It's just very trying due to the controls, and that was just me. And for that, difficulty is kind of like right there in the middle, so I'm just going to give it a retro-like.
A retro-like for difficulty. Is this a retro-loathing? Are we doing a loathing review?
No,
it sounds like we're doing a loathing review.
Yeah, it's not great,
joking.
But it's definitely not terrible.
Alright, so difficulty for me, I like that there's an easy and a medium and hard, so there is adjustable difficulty, which is great. I don't find it super, super hard. I didn't find it super, super easy. There was a lot of frustrating moments that made it harder than it should have been. Going back to the slowdown, that's the moments. But overall, the game is straightforward. You just gotta really memorize a little bit because it's really repetitive in that regard, and everything spawns the same. There's not a lot of variation there. Right. It's a straightforward game that has the adjustable difficulty, which I like. I don't like games that don't have that, because there's a lot of hard games that don't allow you to adjust it to make it easier if you're having a hard time with a hard game. So because of that, I will give the difficulty a retro double like for difficulty. Yeah, I think I'm just avoiding the loves in this one. I don't feel any loves, even though it's a game that I have in my collection, and it's a game that I did enjoy. But when it comes down to reviewing, I'm really harsh on this game. It's tough love. Alright, so moving on to fun factor. What did you think of the fun factor in this game, CK?
It wasn't fun. It was enjoyable while I was playing it. Would I pick up the game and play it because I thought it was fun? No. It looks okay, it plays okay, it sounds okay. The game's okay. For me, it really wasn't much fun per se, especially with the slowdowns, as you pointed out, and the controls, especially the jumping control, for me anyway. And I'm just gonna say it's meh. So I give it a retro half-like.
It's a mixed bag review today. It's a game that we love, we enjoy. I'm just going to say love. It's a game that we really like, but clearly we're very hard on this game. I don't know, it's like a gem of a game, but yet there's a lot of things to not like about it, even though it still shines through as a very good game, which is a testament to the developers,
yes,
right?
Yes, it is. It means that if the one or two hiccups that I'm kind of bellyaching about weren't issues, this game would be a great play.
Yeah, alright. Well, fun factor for me, because I got to score it too. I think it's enjoyable. Got a lot of fun in this game. It's obviously a game that when I first started to play, when I got into retro gaming, that I loved right away and enjoyed it right away, I should say. But it's got the big sprites and it's really flashy and it's got that Strider sword and it's really enjoyable because it's not a lot of games have that style and look to it. But the fun gets diminished when you have the slowdowns and you have the little issues where there's hiccups. It doesn't feel like a game that was meant to be put on the Sega Genesis, that they were pushing the system too hard. Mm-hmm. And that's sad because I really feel if they polished it up a little bit more and they didn't release it like this, this game felt like it needed a few patches. This is before the era of patching games.
Right, before DLCs.
Now, yeah, exactly. And I feel like this game, if it came out today in the way it was released, there would have been a lot of people on the internet saying this game needs to be patched. At the time, wasn't going to happen. So I feel they rushed the game and they should have made it a little smoother, which would have improved the fun. But it's still an enjoyable, fun game, and I'm going to give it a retro love for fun. Retro. Sounds a little contradictory there.
Not really.
I still think
you kind of set it up that you liked the game. You kept downplaying that you didn't love it, but ultimately you do love it, and that's a good thing.
I do. I think of all the hiccups and all the little issues with this game, it's not a perfect game. No game is, but this one is flawed, but it's still a flawed gem of a game. So I give it a love for fun. Alright, so moving on to the replay value. What'd you think of the replay value in Strider?
Well, if my fun factor is any testament, my replay value is probably going to be low. I'd play it again for the sake of maybe just getting through the story and playing on some of the cool levels that I didn't get to play on. But outside of that, would I pick this up to just play it for the sake of playing it? If I didn't have to review it, again, I wouldn't replay this game. So, my retro review score for replay is going to be a half-like.
Tough love. Alright, so replay value for me. This game, I don't feel has a lot of replay value. It's enjoyable. It's a fun game to play. I know it sounds a little contradictory saying it's a fun game and yet the replay value isn't there. I don't think every fun game has replay value.
That's
you
true.
know? There's a lot of games that just you enjoy it while you're playing it, but there's really no replay value. I mean, there's not a lot of times where you want to play the levels again because when you get through them, you're a little bit more frustrated than you should be because of the hiccups in this game, because of the broken elements in this game, I should say. And the slowdowns. I know I'm saying that a lot, but it has to be said because it takes away from the enjoyment of the game because there's a lot of them and it's really slow. When you're jumping and you see yourself in slow motion, I mean, it's not a Zack Snyder movie, So it can take away from you wanting to play this game again. But there's a lot to love. It's an enjoyable game, and there's a lot of cool level designs, cool villain designs. The robotic monkey, we didn't mention that, but it has to be mentioned.
Yes,
it's cool.
I agree.
I
agree.
Exactly. Being able to go onto the ceilings and levels where you're on the ceiling. Awesome.
Yes.
But the replay value just isn't there. I don't feel I'd want to play any of these levels again after playing the game. I would put it away for a long time. I still like the game. I still enjoy it. I think it's a classic. But I'm hard on this game for a reason. And both of us are. We don't hate it. We should have a section. Tough love reviews.
Tough love series.
Yeah. But anyways, I gotta score it. So replay value for me, it gets a half-like for replay value.
Okay.
Alright, so I don't think we're going to do story, so let's move on to the influence score. So this is the portion review where we score the influence in 20 seconds or less. So what do you think the influence in this game is, CK?
A high influence. The concept of the game, the character in general. I mean, it was written as a comic character before it even became a video game that was ported to arcades. Several games have been made. Strider's in several other games, I think, as cameos and some of the other Capcom stuff. And there's some influence. I wouldn't say anything for the game itself influenced anything in the future, and I wish it did because there were a lot of great elements. I know I'm going long. My influence is a 1.
So influence for me, I kind of agree with you. I feel like this game had some influence. It was a popular game. It wasn't a game it didn't fly under the radar. People knew of this game. It's clearly one of the more popular games for the Sega Genesis. People do still talk about this game. It's got an influence because it did some really good stuff. It had sequels. It had other games that inspired the swordplay, that kind of swashbuckling kind of character. So I feel it also would have a score of 1. Alright, so this is the portion of review where we flip a coin to see who gets to pick the game for our next review. So heads is high as always. So you're flipping?
I'm flipping. It is Tails.
Oh, again, what do you know? CK's retro karma is better than mine.
Just with the flip.
So what are the games?
We've got Bad Dudes for NES. We've got Double Dragon for NES. And Mega Man 2 for NES.
It's an all NES,
NES
thing. We're breaking the trend. No more Sega Genesis for reviewing, or at least not for a while. Alright, so all the games are in the hat, so now all you gotta do is pick the game from the hat, CK.
Alright, here we go. The winner is Mega Man 2 for NES.
Awesome. So our first NES game in forever. Alright, so this was a fun review of a classic flawed game.
Definitely.
Thank you for being here, CK.
Thank you for having me again.
Alright, so on that note, we will have more retro content in the weeks, months, and years to come. Bye for now.
Ciao, folks.